Everybody, it's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Very honored and blessed today to be part of the 24-hour podcast being hosted and produced by Indie Radio, aka Kinte Ferguson. Thank you so much for allowing me to grace the airwaves for about 2 hours. And I'm glad that everything worked out. Big shout out to the Get Vocal team. Big shout out to, you are allowed to go to the bathroom, Kinte. Don't worry. So, and he hasn't gone to sleep. I asked him, is he crazy? He has been up since like a long time. But I'd like to thank a lot of people that are already in the room. A lady I will guard to is a Princess, L.A. Wade, who's in Toronto, who did an outstanding job. For 2 hours, her and Boogie, we're doing a great thing, and I'm happy that she has time in her positive, productive schedule to join with us. I'd like to say a shout out to Patrick, shout out to Paul Terry Wallace. Thank you so much for joining in. A little background. I'm going to make it real short on myself. I've done over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. I've won one or two awards, and recently I was graced with the Innovator Award by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Don't want to say anything else because you'll get bored. It's all about you guys, you ladies here tonight, or tonight, this afternoon. I'm never used to doing a 4 o'clock Eastern time conversation, but this is all good. Little background. This topic, how difficult it is to change and adapt in today's society. I asked my family online what they wanted to talk about. I told them about this event, and they said, let's do this. So two ladies I have to shout out to, Jada Lopez and Durham Skyrider, combined and gave me this idea. So I'd like to say thank you to both. I know Jada is not here right now, but Durham Skyrider is here. So thank you so much. And with the changing times we're in, how is it you're changing? Or are you changing? Is it a challenging thing? Is it an easy thing? And it doesn't matter what area you want to talk about. I want people to share about change and adoption in today's society. We could give an example. If you're a worker in the United States for the federal government, you've had a big shift because you may not be working right now. Is it technology? Is it raising your children? Is it something in yourself that finding difficult to change? I'm just putting it out there. I'm just going to manage the ship. You guys are going to drive the ship. So who would like to start off with a conversation topic? Don't be shy.
I was like, I'll leave it to LA if she wants to go ahead and come on in first.
I knew it.
I love it, Patrick. Ladies first. I love it.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. What exactly do you want me to answer? How hard is it to change in today's society?
Yeah.
It's fucking hard. How's that for an answer?
No problem.
It's hard. It's hard, especially for me as a Generation X woman of color who is, for the most part, technologically challenged. I feel like every week I have to learn a new update for my fucking phone. I'm sorry, I'm angry. I'm the angry Black woman online right now because it's hard. And I don't know what to do in terms of bridging those gaps. It requires more sophisticated knowledge just to keep up with the changes. And so, and ain't nobody got time for that because, you have your life, you have your children, you have your job, you have your friends and other extended family. I would say that it's extremely hard to change in this day and age.
Okay, and LA,
gentlemen,
I love the passion you fired out with. So let's talk. There's so many things we could cover there. So let's start with one of them, the whole area of technology change. Paul or Patrick, how are you handling the changes in technology since LA breathed the fire first out here?
You want me to go first or you want to go first, Patrick?
I'll take it as a millennial that has been born into technology.
Okay.
I don't take anything with technology. It seems like there was a generation before myself, just before myself, my fiance's generation, the late 70s and into 80. We were able to kind of progress with times with not just technology, but with relationship goals and maybe understanding, like with men in general, understanding that there are feelings to be said and to be talked about rather than it just being stuck in a past in the 50s and 60s where you can't let anybody know how you feel. And that's why people die at an early age, is from anxiety and stress. And I think with social media, in a way, it started
proliferating.
It started kind of with certain people of a certain age. It started. That's the way they could get their ideas out, or that's the way they could kind of get their stress out. And then, of course, all about trolls and how that works now on the internet. But it evolved, unfortunately, to that. I don't think that's where it ends. I think technology doesn't just end with trolls and Trump and let's build a wall and this whole crazy media obsession. I think it actually evolves from here, because everything from Earth that has been, whether it's single-celled organisms all the way through technology and technological advances, everything has hit an evolution point, and past that, I think this will keep up. So if you can keep up with trends, if you're a person who can see trends in media or in technology, in relationships, in how people interact with each other, that will keep you ahead of the curve, I think.
Okay, but Patrick, I'm gonna put this out there. You said two challenging words there. Keep up. Keep up. That's so much easier said than done. LA would say, and I'm sure LA's in their mind saying, I don't got the time to keep up.
Neither do I, but I still do. That's the issue. It's all about, to me, it's about the willingness.
How do you keep up?
It's about, with technology at least. Let's not talk about relationship. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's keep it to technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
To technology alone. If you keep up with, what I mean by that is, search Google once a week. Search Google once a week, see what new trends are happening. See what's new on Twitter. Are they coming up with updates? If that's what you're interested in. See, you also have to find not only trends, but also something that interests you as well, so that when you find the niche that interests you in technological advancement, that's when you'll find that it's much easier to make time for it, because it's something you're actually invested in mentally.
Well, you make it sound so easy.
Go ahead, Elaine.
I don't speak with emotion, and I know people hate me for that. I speak very to the point.
It's okay.
There's nothing wrong with that, Patrick.
Yeah, very analytical. That is how my mind works.
And so analyze the time of day that it takes to raise two children, work in a emotionally labor-intensive position, take care of yourself. I mean, the time is just not available. And I do try to do it. I mean, I'm here, right? So I'm trying, I'm doing my part.
Right.
But
I think you take it personally, though. You take it too personal as an attack on, possibly an attack on, what it means to raise a family, and it's hard to keep up with everything because I'm doing, A, B, C, D, and E. That's fine. But there is, I guarantee you will be able to find 2 seconds once a week, 2 seconds to look up on Google to keep up with technology. And I'm sure Dr. Vibe, you run your show, correct? Okay. So you have to know what advances are happening in your field, in podcasting, on Twitter. Regardless of what else is happening in your life, there is a specific thing that you have to keep up on, because it's required of you to stay relevant in your field.
You're hilarious. I'm taking it personally.
LA, Paul, come on in.
Hey, you have to be able to, your inbound stream. You have to be able to select and curate what's relevant to you moment to moment. I'm 74 years old, so I've seen the whole evolution of tech from the very beginning, and now I can go. I used to run circles around everyone in tech until 5 years ago, when the cell phone came in and the internet got more popular. Now everyone's on a level playing field. Nobody has a intrinsic advantage over anybody else. And we've got this incredible amount of podcasts coming at us. There are 800,000 podcasts now. There's approaching 1 billion podcasts. That is an incredible amount of information. How do you curate that? How do you choose from that that tidal wave of information coming in. It's just incredible. And then at the same time, I like retro technology. I can go back and play with a 30-year-old radio and get it to work, you know. And I see relevance in some retro technology to today's technology. And I'll pass it over to LA. Go ahead, LA.
No, I before LA and I continue here, Paul, you are the admiration of everyone here. There you are in your hot tub broadcasting. Like everyone's like loving it. Love it. And just reading some I just want to shout out some other people here. Jay Karina, Danny, thank you so much for jumping on. Shannon is saying I want to do a podcast from the shower. Hey, let it rain. Let it rain. But but just in the area of podcasting, like I started online broadcasting, whatever you want, about over 10 years ago. And it's just so funny. When I was doing it back then, people said, what are you doing? Don't understand. Like, what are you doing this for? And now all those people are either telling me they're starting a podcast or they're asking me how to do a podcast. So it's very interesting in regard. I can't be everywhere, so I'm very selective on what on and that's basically what it. I'm not going to be able to catch everything, and I don't want to catch everything because I don't got the time for it. But I'm just very selective in what I do catch. And sure, there's going to be some things that I miss, but it's more important to catch something than miss everything.
So he said what I said, only nicer.
Well, I think but you know what? It's again, timing is a factor. But Durham Skywriter is saying, I'm super busy, but I take shortcuts by keeping up with people like Leanne Smith, Chris D, Peter Stewart, who have informational shows every week. Yeah, I definitely think that there are people out there that can shortcut the shortcut for you, basically, in regards to it. But again, everyone has different amounts of time. Everyone has different amounts of responsibility. And I know a little bit about LA, and she has a very intense life, right?
Well, let's not talk about. Okay, I just came off of a podcast where we were talking about the gender divide and the elephants in the room. And the big elephant in this room is that I'm speaking to 3 males who, 2 of which are white males, that may not understand the complexity by which it is to be a Black woman in this world. But I know that that's not the topic here. So I'm just going to leave that there and just say that I see the elephant and then continue on. I'll also state that I do try, I do try with the time that I have. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be here online right now in this podcast. So I just think that there are larger gaps in terms of people's expectations of what they would like to see themselves do. Everyone wants that autonomy. They all have the rights to dream and be able to do diverse things and be interesting and relevant. And I just think that there's a gap in the ability for everyone to be able to do that in the same capacity. So there's a stratification that's taking place between people's ability to have autonomy online and the people's ability to, have agency around finding that knowledge and staying relevant with everything that's going on.
Right. And I won't talk much about it. And I'm sorry, Dr. Vibe, I'll let you have the floor. This is your show here. But I will say that, that was a huge assumption to what you made there. And I know you want to, hit on that assumption and then walk away from the topic. But, that's all. I just think that was kind of wrong of you to assume that I have no idea that's assuming that I've never grown up with anybody.
You want to be a white man and you can't know how it is to be a Black woman. That's not an assumption. That's a fact. Right.
No, it has nothing to do with me dating them all my life, having a Black fiance, having a mixed daughter. That has nothing to do with it, right?
You still don't know what it's like to be her.
Oh, okay. All right.
So in regards, let's move it to other areas that people may have changed in regards to in your life. Technology is one of them. Is there other areas that people are having challenging with change? Are people having any change dealing with the different generations, the younger generation? Because we have different ages in here. We have a Paul who's like in his 70s. I'd like to ask Paul in regards to, is it difficult for you to handle the changes that the society is bringing, especially coming from the younger people?
Generally, I find that I try to maintain like a leadership role in technology with younger people, and I find them coming to me for advice and mentoring, and I go to them for the same thing. It's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street at all, and it's a process of mentoring each other.
Okay. I like that. I like that he realizes that, and a lot of people don't realize. Even the younger generation, I would say, is the hardest not to realize it. They don't realize that they look at people that are older than them, older generations, and a lot of them think that they have nothing else to offer. But I agree with Paul. You need to go both ways.
LA, in your full-time gig, you deal a lot with younger people.
I do,
and I guess you can speak in two ways. Obviously, you can speak as one being older and dealing changes that they're bringing, and what are they saying about changes that they have to deal with in society and adaptability?
I think the biggest concern for people is for the students. I deal with adult students. I'm not dealing with children.
Okay,
so, yeah. So a big part of what they are finding challenging to their keeping up and with all of the changes is how to stay relevant, how the education system isn't really there to help them necessarily find a job, but it's more so how to be innovative and find ways to be entrepreneurial. I think that's mostly what I'm hearing. The technology changes and people, and there is a polarity between those that have and those that have not. And I work with people who have not. And so class is a big difference in what's possible for people in terms of even imagining change. I would say that's a huge challenge.
And it's interesting. This morning, I was watching CBS Sunday Morning. That's on every Sunday morning. And the first lead story was very interesting about college students in the United States that are homeless. It was a fascinating piece, and to be honest, it was something I didn't even think about till it was brought to me, and just the challenges. And I was thinking in relation to today's conversation topic that the changes that they have to deal with, let alone just trying to make it in school, let alone the changes of expensive education. There's so many things they have to deal with, and it was a very fascinating conversation and piece, an enlightening piece, an educational piece.
Did you the segment on the podcasting on CBS Sunday Morning by Dr. Vod?
Yeah, I caught that too. That was really interesting too. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Well, so I guess, so I want to also bring up this. How do you feel like in general, how are people adapting and changing? What is, I think, the not good and good on way people are acting to change these days? I think we're seeing more of the challenging part of change. How is it affecting our society in general? The difficulty, is it getting more challenging and there's more negative effects with the changes in our society? Is all change good? Is some change bad? What would you have to say to that? Anyone here or in the on the comment section?
I think that we're facing a frightening prospect because AI is going to come on the scene, and we're not going to be ready for it. And I think that quantum computing is going to kick in with AI, and that's going to be like a double punch, to mankind. That I do not know if we are ready for that. And I wonder if the Chinese are going to get there first.
Well, and I don't mind. I don't want this conversation to be so in the world today, but I also want to see the non-technological aspects of change, good or bad, in our society today. And Jay Karina says change is mostly good. We always fear what we don't know and rail against it. Interesting.
Yeah, I think change is good also. I think change is good, but within context. We need to understand where we've been so that we can extract the things that worked that will benefit us moving forward, so that change doesn't have to be so startling and scary for people, if possible.
Sorry, go ahead.
So then let me put it out there. Is change moving too fast these days?
For some, yes. I think for some people that they like change at a slow pace. I do think for them, yes, it is moving too fast. But I think as far as quantum computing, like Paul said, and AI, I think the only good practical use for AI, like advanced AI and also quantum computing, would only be for interplanetary travel. I think it's for like NASA, SpaceX. That's the only thing of good use that I can find for that, because of the reason with quantum computing. It would be to what takes human beings years to figure out. They might be able to figure out, or quantum computer might be able to figure out the solution a lot faster as to how to build more aerodynamic, spacecraft and things like that. But I don't see any other practical reason. Like, we're pretty good with our phones now. Our phones have come a long way as far as what we can do with our phones, our smartphones, that I don't think, with the addition of huge outlets of social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, things like that, I don't think that we need quantum computing for our smartphones, because I think that's just taking it way too far. But as far as practical uses, finding things with, outside of our planet and helping companies like SpaceX, NASA, things like that, the Blue Origins project, that's the only thing I think that's good for, to be honest with you. Because quantum computing, I think people don't realize that some people might think it as, or see it as, well, it's moving us forward and it's going to be doing things for us in such a snap, and we'll be able to have, like the Google glasses, but it's implanted in you, and there's other things that could come with that in the future. And it's like, but do you really need that? Is that really what we need? And I don't think that's what we need. I think what we need in quantum computing is to help with interplanetary travel and things like that in space exploration, not with helping our phones read things faster.
Okay. So I'm going to reel this conversation in a bit. I want to focus on more non-technological things.
I apologize.
Yeah. So, because I want to deal with the things on Earth, not the things out of Earth right now. And I want to make sure that everyone understands that I'm concerned about the changes that are happening in everyday life with people. Like, the technology thing is not a bad thing, but one of the prices that some people are paying is our privacy. Are people getting used to having their privacy put out there? Right? It's not something that whether it's the people on here or the people in the room, are people cool with their privacy being accessed, or their identity being accessed? That's the sort of change I'm looking at. In regards to all that computing stuff, that's coming down the road. The person in the street every day, those are the people that I want to focus on today, on those things.
I'm not. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ellie.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just saw your lips moving there just a second. I was just going to say about people every day. No, I don't think it's right that they're like with Facebook, how their information was being openly given away. No, that's a complete invasion of privacy. But then you take the people that still walk down the street every day and use Facebook and scroll through Facebook, even after knowing that they do this, like myself. So the real question is how much information are you willing to give away? Not are you comfortable with it, but how much information are you willing to give away, in my mind, now?
Let me ask here then, Paul, how much, let me answer that question you just put out there. How much information are you comfortable being released out there to, like, a Facebook?
I'm sorry, are you talking to me or Paul?
Paul and yourself, everyone in the room here, how comfortable, like, that sort of change. 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't even think about our information being out there. Now it's out there. How do you feel? Is that something, a change you're cool with? Or are you still trying to say, I'm not really happy with it, etc.?
I I feel that in a way, I believe people understand that with things like the government taking information and government agencies already having all your info, and they have been spreading your info around for years. I think in a bad way, and it's not a good thing, but I think a lot of people are seeing the thing with Facebook as, I guess you would say, the lesser of two evils. And I hate that phrase. I absolutely loathe that phrase, but I truly believe that fits when it comes to that question you asked me, is how comfortable am I? More comfortable than knowing if it's being sold by my government rather than possibly Facebook, so I get a few spam emails once in a while. That's, a big difference than someone like Big Brother watching, rather than, at least to me, Big Brother watching, other than, having spam emails, like I'm saying.
Hey, Tony, what's up?
Hey, what's going on, man? Hey, LA. Patrick, hey. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So,
go ahead. Go ahead, ladies first. She's going to say something, LA.
Oh, I was just noticing that Jay Karina online said, we went from gay marriage is an abomination to love who you love. That's progress. And I think with Dr. Vibe's vision of having it be about people, I was just thinking about how things change in law, and then attitudes take a little bit longer to change. So change isn't as instant within the individual. And so anything that we interact with, that change has to match within yourself along with what's happening externally to you, like a law, like technology. And it's difficult to get people who are used to being a certain way to wrap their mind around, okay, there's changes happening, but I don't know what to do in order to match the changes that are happening. How do I catch up to it? And so by providing, Patrick, of, going on Google and looking something up, that will help those individuals start to change their attitude towards the change. But it's a struggle for people. Change internally takes a lot longer, I think, than it is for the collective society's decision to make things change.
Dr. Vibe, did you see Kente's comment in the comments?
I was just going to read it. That Kinte said some people adopt and some others get left behind. And I fully agree with that. The concern I have is I feel that more people are being left behind every day. Yeah. That's the concern. That's why. And Jay Chris,
I don't think people care anymore as much as they maybe could.
A lot of it, and I might go a little off on base on this, but a lot of it has to do with two things. One is values, your values and other people's values. And then not just the values, but how you understand how your value relates to someone else's values and vice versa. We have such a diverse world of Americans, Mexicans, British people, Australian people, all over the world.
Don't forget Canadians, by the way.
And Canadians, Canadians, and then you can group them together. North America, South America, all that, stuff. And this kind of goes into the topic I want to talk to Dr. Bob about our cultures really understanding each other, our diverse people really understanding diverse people. It's hard to deal with adaptation. It's hard to deal with change whenever you don't even understand yourself, much less someone else, or how a society can affect another society or whatever. So in actuality, adaptation is very hard to deal with because we don't understand each other, and we won't understand each other. We have the mentality of me, I'm the only one, F you, excuse me, that's the mentality that essentially we all have.
Yeah, I like that you say essentially, because I did want to point out that it's not everyone.
So,
and I think, Tony, those are really good points. And Jay Karina says adaptation is how we survive for eons.
Yeah, well, it is, but still, every point in history It doesn't matter if it goes back to the biblical times, the Roman times, the modern day times. You're still going to have war, you're going to have famine, you're going to have disease, you're going to have everything because of people's inability to understand how people can influence or uninfluence each other.
So, so Tony, would you then say that many people or more people than ever before are more resistant to change and adaptation than ever?
I wouldn't say it's more so. I'd say it's equally as so as every generation, except now we have the ability to communicate all over the world, and we have different circumstances. Biblically speaking, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just our circumstances are different now. We now have technology. We all have a greater way to communicate. We've even changed things like the climate change. I'm not going to go into that because it's not going to be a part of this conversation, but what we've done, an impact on our world in general. It's nothing really new under the sun, pretty much, in my opinion.
Tony, I got a question for you though. When you were saying about communication and, everything is not really changed. It's just now we have technology that can help us, communicate all over the world. But the main word there is communication. Now, I'll put a word in front of that and see what people think in the room here. What about genuine communication? And I'm not talking about fake Instagram communication, Twitter. I'm talking about like LA and I meeting in the street and actually talking to each other and having a good conversation. Like, I haven't seen that from a lot of people that I know. I haven't seen that in years.
Yeah, that's lost today. I can tell you that.
Unfortunately.
That is lost today. That even goes back to the thing of, I'm a big stressor of critical thinking. Nobody knows how to actually think for themselves today and actually have a real debate, have a real communication, ask questions like who, what, when, where, why, to what extent. It's just, it's a mess.
I have a feeling the ones that you're saying can't think for themselves, I don't believe they're in this room right now. I don't believe it's LA or Dr. Vibe or yourself. I don't believe it's anybody in the comments because I truly think that people here that are here today want to have a conversation.
I think that. Oh, sorry, Dr. Vibe. I was just thinking to say that I think that there are changes that are made for convenience, and it doesn't always consider the latent aspects of those changes. So like Tony was saying, we have all this social media to stay connected, yet we're even further apart than we've ever been because we're not connected emotionally on a psychosocial level. So.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is, when I ask somebody how to do something and they say, well, Google it. Don't you tell me to Google nothing. You explain to me how to do something.
Google what? Tell me what to Google, at least.
Well, that's my biggest problem with older generations is that, like my father, he had to teach me and he had to learn new technology, but he had to teach me, like, as I was growing up, if you have a question about something, it's back then it was harder to do because not as much, you couldn't just Google it. You couldn't just go on YouTube at the time. So there were people that you had to ask, but now it's like, if you can't just, to me, if it's a simple enough that you can Google it or YouTube it and see step by step how to fix the issue without having to just go to the person next to you and possibly get an I don't know, or, and this is just me in my experience, a full of crap answer that they don't know what they're talking about, but they act like they do. I would rather go on and Google it or find information about it, figure out how to do it myself. And then when somebody asks, how did you do that? Well, here, I I had to look up the information and figure it out. I had to find the direct sources and use sources. Certain people will say, "Oh, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to look for sources." And people of my generation, even a little bit older than me, will sit down with you and say, "Hey, listen, I get it. You don't understand how to do that right now, but I will show you, and I want to be nice and show you, because I want you to be able to the next time show the next guy that says that, hey, look what I learned." You know, and that I think is something the generations can show each other. I know I'm sitting here, I am the youngest person in the room, but it's okay, because I know that I've got somebody who's technologically savvy enough. You're doing a podcast. She is on the podcast. You're here and you've got your microphone and you're set up. Obviously, people know what they're doing. So, I don't have any issue there, but I do have issue with people that may try to do something, get frustrated because they can't, and then get flustered and not know how to find an answer.
Okay, Jake.
Without asking how to.
Okay, Jake, thank you so much for coming on in. What do you have? You've been saying a great amount of stuff on the side here. Good to have you on verbally. So what do you like to share?
Well, all right. So a couple things. First, I understand why the premise of change is so difficult for us to embrace, because it's frustrating and because it prevents us from being able to do the things that we're tasked with to do every single day. So I give a lot of credit to people who keep trying to keep up with things that they need to, because this is a part of their everyday life. But change, I think, is something that for human beings, this is really tough. And for a society that is so incredibly integrated with the number of ideologies, the number of ideas, the number of just variables that are in it, it is, I think, really important for us all to step back and remember that this is a phase, and it's really, really short in terms of who we are as a society, as who we are just as human beings. We have only been experiencing the kind of changes that we're talking about on an everyday level for less than the past 40 years. And that's small. That's a little tiny drip in the pond. If we're moving further apart from each other, then that needs to be seen as a phase. We need to look at this in a larger picture. It's not like we've abandoned the ability to speak coherently to each other. We haven't abandoned language for some kind of alternate thought process or something like that. We're talking about change that is, I think, both on a minuscule level, like on a macro level, and on a micro level, but we can't see the difference. And so when we start talking about how does technology change our lives, or how does interpersonal communications change because of the changing world around us, I just feel like we need to sort of take a big giant step back and look at sort of what the overall picture here is, and realize that, taking a deep breath, this too shall pass, and we have to keep up with it, and we have to stay current, we have to stay relevant. But we also need to temper this by not making these broad generalization kind of sweeps where we blame generations that are underneath, well, not underneath, but we blame younger generations for being stupid. We are the ones that are raising these people. We are the ones who are supposed to be, well, my generation for sure, we're supposed to be the mentors. We are the parents. We are the people who are supposed to be explaining that change is good and here's how to best use it. Instead, we're just throwing tools at people and saying, okay, everybody be a Michelangelo. And that's not sustainable, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it does.
It does make sense. Well said. I thank LA for giving up her seat and having you come in, and very well said. I want to build on what you've just shared with us in regards to the changing piece. And if I'm off base, please, people, tell me I'm off base. Change is happening so quickly these days, but the average capacity for human beings to adopt that change is basically staying the same. So isn't it a huge concern that the gap is getting wider in regards to handling the change?
Well, you're starting to see the few that actually are willing to be able to handle the change, or that are quick. And I don't mean quick enough by age, because there are people that are older, that of older generations, that can still handle the change. So I'm not saying just from my generation or younger. I mean older generations as well. The people that are willing to, or the percentage that are willing to, it's never going to be 100% in my mind, but the percentage that's willing to try to be learn how to be quick enough to handle the change and try to roll with the changes, I think they will be the ones, like Kente said, either adapt or get left behind. And I hate to say that it's that blank and out there, but yeah.
If there's always somebody. I'm sorry, Dr. Five.
No, I'll let you back. Sorry, Tony. Pardon me. The reason why I made that observation is something that Jay Karina, you put in the comments section about. I just lost it. Just give me a second. That's why people act out and get angry. They feel left out.
Yeah, I think that's really true. But also, along with that very sentiment, it's really, we should know by now that fear makes us act irrationally, and we tend to, and I think this is a protection mechanism that we all have. We want to hold on to the things that we understand and know, because those tried and true mechanisms are what have gotten us this far. So we tend to think that they are the best ways of doing things, instead of embracing and being open to different ideas, because it's scary. But the other piece of that is, sometimes it takes, not everybody processes at the same speed. Not everyone has had the same intellectual environment to grow up in. Not everyone has had the same levels of schooling. There are so many different variables that if we treat society as one giant homogenous piece of collateral, we're doing a huge disservice to the people who are left behind. And those are the people who we really need to handle with kid gloves. We need to give them TLC, not because we feel bad or because they're pathetic or because, oh, I pity you, but because they're the people who, when we take that time to handle this change properly with, they're the people who then stop being the angry mob in our society. They're the people who stop being the dissenters who are doing things because they simply don't have any other avenue. I mean, it's really obvious if you walk into some of the tech stores like a Best Buy, that there are people who understand what's happening inside of their own little, technology bubbles. And then there are people that really don't. And the people that don't are the ones that are yelling at the sales associates, because they just don't get it. And from a wider perspective, if we look at what the shouting box is in our own society, we can see that the people who are being the most vocal are the people who are usually pushing against change as it comes, because either they don't understand it or they don't like it. I mean, like, it's not like I'm saying that we all can't adapt to change. We can, but we all need to treat each other as if we are important and special on this journey, not saying, well, just because you can't figure it out, that means that you're lesser than. And I think that's how people feel. They feel like they're lesser than because they can't figure it out.
Well, what I was going to back to what I was going to say earlier is it's not a thing of it's more of a thing in the way I see things is there's always going to be a group or groups that will say, does the change really need to happen at all? And that's the main thing that causes the conflict is, yes, we understand this change. We see this change is happening, but does it really have to happen at all? Doesn't need,
But that's part of what you had said before, right? About critical thinking. Because just because a change doesn't need to happen for Group A, it doesn't mean that it is not going to enrich and benefit Group B's life. And if Group A is not willing to see from the perspective of Group B, then no change at all is going to make that difference.
Thus the gap, right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
Just want to shout out here. LA is saying yes, she is agreeing with what you're saying, Jay Karina. She says accessibility needs equals being left behind. I can't talk today. Is that what our society stands for?
Yes.
Wow.
If we all stop looking, maybe it's because I'm not Buddhist, but I love Buddhism, and part of Buddhism is like seeing this a less stratification of the world and something a little bit more almost less tangible. And so if you stop holding on to an idea of permanence as being something that is sort of where you put your anchors, if you stop putting your anchors into what you just believe is permanent and instead be open to not just adaptation, but to change in general, you'll find a way to make it work. It's not that you find that there's always joy in every single change. It's that you begin to understand that change is the way that the whole universe happens. Nothing is going to happen in the universe without change. None of us would be happy if that happened. So if we reframe how we think about change as something that maybe we don't like it at the moment, but there's a way to get through it, it will help us to. And also, sometimes change is just going to happen. And look, I hated 2016. I hated what happened, but it happened, and I'm still here, and I'm still existing, and I'm still finding joy and stuff, and it's okay. It's not okay, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm okay. The world is going to continue to move on, and I'm going to find ways to express myself. But you got to get over the fear, and you got to get over the idea that you think that you can never change something or that change can never happen. I hope that makes sense.
It does, and there's something on that, and I studied Shin Buddhism for years, and I love that you brought that up. I know you say you're not Buddhist, but you brought it up, and I wanted to say it's a lot like equating it to physicists or scientists. They understand that they have ideas of the way things should be, but they know that science is always going to possibly prove them wrong or move the narrative forward a little bit past where they thought it would ever go, and they have to accept that and try to move forward with it. Because if they don't move forward with it, they're not a scientist anymore. They're out of their field, and someone else will take over for them. For one thing I wanted to say, though, in 2016, I know this really doesn't matter, but it's something I wanted to put in there. A lot of people would think 2016 and what Trump was surrounding himself with as people that didn't care about Social Security, disability, and food stamps and health care and everything like that, right? Mostly when people think, when I say people, I mean white people, and I mean privileged white people. They hear that and they think minority, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not at all true. The majority of it is the majority of it, because white people are still the majority in the U.S. The majority of what they're thinking of are actually white people. There are other white people, but they don't see that. And I think in 2016, they're thinking, well, we don't care because it's just other people. And it's like, no, I myself am on disability from the state of Illinois for bipolar disorder. I myself have had to receive, because to help my fiance and I pay for things, have had to receive food stamps. I have had to have those in order to help me with financials. But yet people would look at me, if the way I dress when I go out to like her shows and everything, they look at me and not for a second think that any of those things were happening. And that's the biggest thing that I wish I could correct in the American public today.
Yeah, well, I'm in the same boat, because I'm in Virginia and I grew up in North Carolina. I become disabled because, and they're using that term again, but I become disabled because of my diabetes, my cerebral palsy, my complications, everything else, and I'm in the same boat. So,
but Jay, what were you saying?
I was just going to say, so that is a perfect example of how we adapt to change. Life becomes hard, and we find a way to adapt to it. We find a way to figure out how to make things happen, how to put food on the table, how to address the basic issues of financial security. There's no such thing as, for human beings, a perfect scenario where everything comes together. And maybe once in a great while in your life, you have epiphany moments where, wow, the whole world makes sense. And that's beautiful, but it's a moment. most of our lives are really spent in just trying to manage the everyday stuff that happens to us. And I don't really think that this is any different than if we were to, let's say, transport ourselves back 300 years. The people were still doing the same thing. They were just doing it with different tools and different abilities in society.
Yep. Like I said, there's nothing new under the sun.
But I think we think we are. We think we are so much smarter, so much more, brilliant about stuff because we have more access to knowledge. But I think that's really very false. I think that part of the problem with not wanting to adapt to change is we somehow think we've made it. I don't know how to describe that other than just to say, wow, it's such a false narrative that we weave in that way. It's just not real.
Well, Jay, and here's the thing is I love to bring this back to science for 2 seconds if I could. My shirt and everything. I'd like to bring it back to science. We think we're special because some people look at, let's say, apes and say and even chimps are one of our closest relatives here on Earth, right? They look at chimps and they say, there's only 2% separating us from them. And look how far and above and away that we think we are from them. What do you think the next, and I'm saying race as in not, any kind of specific race, but race of whoever it is. And I know extraterrestrials, I'm not getting into that, but I'm saying any other community of beings from anywhere, what if they were 2% ahead of us? How would they look at us? And that's where you need to put, I think a lot of human beings need to put their specialty in a box notion away, because if we have the ability as human beings, as Homo sapiens, to be 2%, only 2% above chimps and apes, as far as intelligence level, as far as DNA, and then you go and you ask yourself, well, what if someone or something was 2% above us? What would that look like to us? Or, again, what would we look like to them? And I think that will maybe humble a few people that can have some critical thinking skills.
We can be proud of who we are right at this very moment and be really super excited about the accomplishments that we have made and not feel like we are somehow entitled to something greater than where we are right now because we somehow have access to information or knowledge or whatever. We're still human beings. We're still struggling with the same issues. We still have the same basic wants and desires. And until we recognize that, embracing change is the best way for us. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's an augmentation. Change is the way that we facilitate meeting all of those needs. We have to change because we have to meet those needs. So right now we're in a weird sort of at a weird kind of crossroads where we've got a lot of different tools getting thrown at us, and we're still basically trying to figure out how to meet the same basic needs with those tools. What we emerge from out of this is we don't know. We don't know what it's gonna look like. So the best thing that we can do is, God, I hate to say it this way, but we have to somehow find joy in the moment, in the stuff that we're doing, as hard as it is, as adverse as it is. Use the tools that help us the best, and don't worry about other people changing and doing things off on their scale. That's their scale.
Right. Just to jump in here, shout out to Donald who's jumped in, and Patricia A, aka Durham Skywriter, says, if you keep saying there's nothing new under the sun, you're going to stop noticing new things if you haven't already. So that is good. Yeah, Patricia, if you'd like to come in, would love you to come in too. And Tony says he's more than happy to jump out. So
yeah, I can hop off, but I kind of want to say something to what Patricia's saying. There is, even though there is nothing new under the sun, in my opinion. Yeah, people do notice things all the time, and it's just a way of how history is done. Well, like for example, and this might be a little controversial. Do you think that Columbus discovered America?
No, that to be not a fact.
No, okay. That's my point of even though Columbus was the first one to in history to say, "Hey, I've discovered a new world." In actuality, the new world's been here all the time. There's people, people here all the time going back. Look at the Canadian show. I'm not Canadian, but I watch it a lot. The Curse of the Oak Island. There's been activity up there on Oak Island going on since the 17th, 16th, 15th century, and even before that. People knew about the Americas. They just didn't want to admit it, say it, whatever. Does that make sense where I was going?
Yep.
With what yeah. So anyway, let me hop off and let me let somebody else try to come in if they want to.
Okay, thank you again, Tony. LA is saying, is adaptation also about assimilating to the majority rule? These are the sort of things that I wanted to get to. So are we just now basically in a state in the journey of society that we're just adapting instead of questioning?
I would say the majority. Like I said, there is a small minority that understands how to actually adapt and change and find new ways and have critical thinking and ask critical questions. But I think the majority of people are okay being asleep. Would you agree, Jay?
I
sort of in a matrixy kind of way.
I mean, yes, and I think the further point about understanding being led, LA brings up a really good point, because being led into or lulled into a sense of security because change is just happening, and so therefore just embrace it without thinking critically about it or without coming to some kind of personal feeling about it, that's similarly dangerous. I mean, you can't just adapt to things just because without having some kind of personal understanding about why things are happening. I mean, I think that that's one of the things that sets human beings so much, that gives them so much adaptability. And also there are, change is so incredibly diverse, just even into itself, because there's sociological change, there's cultural change, there's personal change, there's technological change, there's climate change, there's all kinds of changes. And so we have to, I think, be careful that we don't generalize what we are thinking about in terms of change as one word, because each one of those requires a different tool set, a different intellectual bent in order for us to grab that information and be able to process it.
It's interesting when we're talking about that, what just came up, that term embrace change, and you never hear a lot of times, but think about it before embracing it. You just got to embrace change. It's almost like, it's like 1984. You just got to do it. You don't think about it, you just do.
Well, I think you're taking that as a broad spectrum, though, rather than when embracing change. Our minds, as we talked earlier about quantum computing for 2 seconds, our minds have the ability to make a decision in a split second. So I don't think it's going to take me 3 days to think over what new change is happening. It may take me a few minutes to really analyze, if I'm smart about it, break things down, whatever the change is, analyze what it is, and analyze whether or not it's good for me and can benefit me in the long run.
No, I actually take issue with that. I actually think that that's not 100% right on, because I have turned the corner on a lot of different thinkings as I have matured and hopefully gotten wiser. I have changed my mind about a lot of things that I once thought were changes that didn't benefit us, that seemed frivolous and superfluous. And now I think, no, these are integral parts of who we are, and they do have a place in our society, and they are right. And because of that, I actually think that that's why extended periods of thought are important. It's one of the reasons, which is interesting to me, it's one of the reasons that democracy is such an incredible tool that we have. It requires people to really think, and most of us maybe don't always do as good and thorough of a job, but we do think about stuff. We do spend time, not just a day or so, but sometimes many weeks, many months, thinking about how we should approach things. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think
no,
that
I don't mean with every situation, but I did say in the beginning, it's a situation-based approach. That's what I'm saying. A situation-based approach. If I'm saying embrace change, like in 2008, President Barack Obama, or at the time wasn't elected yet, let's say, it doesn't take me 2 seconds to realize that what George Bush did for the country, that was bad, and that what Barack Obama could promise to do and to bring wouldn't take me more than 5 minutes to realize I should probably vote for this guy. But there's other situations where what is technology going to do for us? Is it going to hurt us in the long run? Is it good for the government? Is it good for interplanetary travel? Is it good for the economy? Yes, that is a longer term thing to think about. So yes, I'd say case by case basis. It depends on what you're going to offer your 100% effort of a thought process to. Yes, I fully agree with you.
Want to add to that, Alden?
And I'm sorry for interrupting if I did.
Jay Karina, do you want to add to that commentary at all?
Well, the only thing that I think we just need to sort of make sure that we are measured in is not to shame people for not being able to embrace or keep pace with change. Everybody requires a different set of time parameters when it comes to change, because while some people are perfectly happy to do the same thing every single day of their lives, and that's their routine, that's what they want, other people need things that are more stimulating, and so they go and they actively seek out change. And those are the people that maybe will be able to adapt to change more efficiently or a little bit quicker. It doesn't necessarily, though, make it right. And it's when we start saying that change is that it's inevitable, that that I agree with that. It is inevitable. We do need to understand that. But at the same time, I think we also need to make allowances for each other and really, again, I'm going to say this one more time, handle with kid gloves and really give TLC to people who cannot adapt as quickly, because integrating them into all of our changes can only add to who we are. It's not about exclusion. It's not about making people feel upset or bad that they can't make changes faster or that they're not adapting to society at light speed. It's about understanding that if you can't, we're here for you. The people who can, we're here for you. If I need help in some way, I need to be able to reach out and get it and not feel shamed about it. I hope that.
Well, and did you hear what was his name? Tony, that was in here earlier, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
Tony.
Okay, did you hear what I said to him? Because I said exactly what you're saying now. I said I would rather it be where instead of asking and being confused and trying to catch up and play catch up, ask someone who has the intelligence not the intelligence, that's the wrong word, has the experience, rather. That's what I meant to say. Has the experience in dealing with technology or experiencing advancements and change in the certain aspect that you're trying to figure it out in, and then ask them, hey, how do I do this? I'm kind of falling behind a little bit. How do I do this? And then I would say, then take the time to teach that person, like I did say to Tony on this recording. And I said, and then that way, when someone else says they're having trouble, now you can go and say, hey, look, I've got this.
Yeah.
I can handle this now, and I can teach the next guy.
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
or girl. So yeah, no, I completely understand that. I just think it's not 100% situation either.
Okay, before we go any further, Donald's been very patient.
Sorry.
Waiting. Well, Donald, no problem. Thanks for taking the time to jump in. Would like to hear what you want to share.
Yeah, it was just the topic of how difficult it is to change and adapt in today's society. I think it's not a matter of how difficult it is going to be. It's a matter of whether you're willing to or not. There's some changes, like what this video that's been showing in the background is just machine learning. For there's 3D printers that are working with 3D materials that are really advanced, but there's also machine learning that's added to that. So even in the old days where an engineer would sit down and draw up a part, even those types of jobs are going to go by the wayside because machine learning is actually going to displace a lot of those engineers as well. So the engineering, basic jobs, transportation, communications, there's so many jobs that are going to be lost to technology, but you're going to have to go back to either a few of the old trades, which are working with your hands and actually being able to, which not many people can do, or you're going to be having to be artistic, or you're going to have to deal with people one-on-one in psychology, coaching, the arts, those types of trades. Machines can handle to a certain extent, but they're still not going to do the same job that a human would. It's going to take a long time for machine learning and that development of AI to develop to the point where they could take over those types of jobs.
Like a consciousness, an AI consciousness.
Yeah. And also a consciousness with an actual moral base. That's one of the things that most scientists are kind of worried about, because machines don't really have a moral base that they're working from. It's either yes or no.
But what do you consider
gray area.
What do you consider moral base, though? Because there are serial killers that say they have a moral base. There are people that do good things that say they have a moral base. So what do you consider a moral base to teaching to machines? I mean, and maybe not even teaching to machines. Maybe it's something it would pick up on.
Yeah, they do learn on their own based on information that they collect. So I don't even believe that it'll be something that we will teach them. I think it's something that they will learn on their own.
Good point. All right, let's just check up here. Patricia A is saying there's a certain social media expert who chastises me for being late when I ask questions about social media. I would be a horrible journalist if I withheld information simply because I thought you should already know about it. LA says agree. Ellie from Francis saying I disagree. Now everyone is hyper specialized and that's annoying. We can't communicate anymore. Experts only on one subject are useless.
I agree to the last point. Yes.
But
that's
also,
why they're called experts, though, unfortunately.
But also, just as Donald was talking, right? Even I could feel a certain level of anxiety building based on what he was saying, and it took me a minute to understand what that was. Right? When anybody puts forth the kind of okay, this is what's going to happen, right? And they don't root it in answers, in real world applications that may take its place. So AI is going to take over for, let's say, almost all of our manufacturing needs. And so it will replace human beings on that scale. What we're missing out of that, although I recognize that we don't know what the answer is yet, we're missing the dialogue about what's going to happen to all of those displaced workers. So how will our economy change? And this is part of the problem with talking about change. It is so much like tipping over dominoes, that by the time that you've had the conversation about the first domino falling, 16,000 other dominoes have fallen behind it, and you simply cannot or don't have the bandwidth to talk about every single domino that's fallen. But they're all touch points. Every single one of those is a touch point. So what do we do with the economy? How do we handle displaced workers? How do we handle benefits? How do we handle what we now understand as our societal makeup in terms of how it integrates with our economy? What would that look like? And so the broad sweeping issues that are facing us for the future, they create anxiety simply by being put forth as this is what may or may not happen in the coming future. And people, like I said before, there's so many things going on every single day. I think it's really difficult for people to go, oh, okay, well, now I have to worry about what's going to happen in the next 30 years. It's tough.
You got to worry about what's going to happen in the next 5 years.
Right.
Because
I wouldn't even.
I have to say this before I go. The one I have to go real quick, but what I wanted to say to that, what Jay was saying, is that the whole fact of the matter is just like during the Depression when people were jumping out of windows when the stock market crashed, and then there was big, huge soup lines and stuff, and there was all these people that were unemployed. The same thing is going to happen because this is a technological revolution. So it's totally different. It's displacing so many people at such a fast pace that's just going to be happening. And then there's going to be some other thing that's going to come in and evolve that will take its place, or help to reintegrate those people who are fallen by the wayside. Because not everybody was going to be able to, just pick up the slack and learn a new trade, or get re-educated, or even find a position, because that are going to be continuously displacing the regular worker. So that's what I had to say about that.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. A new FDR will rise.
Yes, well, something like that will probably take place within the next 5 years.
I think a good example of what we're talking about right now is look what's happened to the audio industry in the last 20, 25 years.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Look how many people have been displaced, and, the change that has gone through that industry, and look what's happened to the workers. A lot of them are being retrained, if they are being able to be retrained, right, if it's possible. Who knows, the jobs that they're being retrained for will even be there because technology is affecting those jobs too.
Yep. That's right. And it's all, some people, I think they look at change with kind of a negative, point of view in most cases. Because like even coal, when there's poor people that are sitting there saying, I'm a coal miner and I just think that coal should be kept on digging out. We should keep on using coal and I need to keep on digging that coal out. It's a old technology that just needs to be put away and put to sleep. It's like a diesel truck or a diesel car that's driving around on diesel fuel. It's just an old technology that needs to be put to sleep. Because just because we were able to make something doesn't mean that it was a good thing. I walk down the street sometimes with brand new diesel cars driving by me, and they stink to high heaven. And you think, Jesus, where's all this pollution going? I mean, it's literally the amount of pollutants that are coming out of these vehicles is probably 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times more than a benzene or a gasoline driven car. And then, even way more than that when it comes to electric cars. So, just because we've maybe developed some technology doesn't mean that it's good. So it will be a kind of like an ebb and flow of these different technologies. Some that will work and some that will be adopted.
But then I think we all need to also understand at the same time that just because a technology is being phased out and just because it's an antiquated system, that doesn't mean that we need to lose the compassion that we have for the human beings that are affected by it, because just saying that coal is antiquated doesn't put food on the table of that same coal miner's it doesn't put food in front of his kids. There are real world issues to saying that, okay, we don't want to do this anymore because we found a better way. But the part of change for us, which we're not good at, is putting something in place of the things that we are replacing. Because just to say that we can do something better by doing it this way doesn't mean that we have to ignore the way that we did it before and figure out how to either move those people into different technology sectors or find a way for them to continue to be useful. Human beings cannot simply just be irrelevant. That piece of the conversation, I feel like, always gets missed out. We are not, we are the drivers of technology. And if we are the drivers of technology, we can't just behave with technology like it is some kind of, omnipotent force that will to solve all of our problems. We are the ones who are driving this. I hope that makes sense.
Think about it this way, though. I'm not talking about making humans irrelevant. I'm talking about freeing them up to do whatever they want to do.
I know, but I think human beings feel that way, though, Donald. Human beings feel like they are irrelevant when they have been replaced, and that's where the fear and anxiety from that change comes from. So if we want to placate that, then facilitate what's going to come next, we have to be willing to acknowledge the fact that this is an issue and not just sort of sweep it under the rug and say to those people, well, too bad, so sad. Coal sucks. There has to be something else.
Coal does suck.
I know. I'm just saying that doesn't help that person become.
No, I'm not saying that. But what happens? Just use this as an analogy for a lot of these things, a lot of these issues. What if there was no such thing as coal, and these people lived in the Appalachian Mountains, where a lot of this coal is coming from, and all of a sudden for some reason they weren't able to get into the coal mines for whatever reason, just say an avalanche or something closed down those coal mines for a very long period of time. Everybody has the ability to move from a location. That's why sometimes there have been massive movements of people across different countries. China has had some of the biggest mass exoduses that anyone's ever known. I'm not saying that these people are irrelevant. I'm just saying that they have to come to grips. Every person has to come to grips that the fact that their livelihood might be taken away at some point in time in the near future. So it's not being harsh. I'm not saying too bad for you. It's just a reality that most people are going to have to face up to. And it's sometimes you might have to end up moving. You might have to really think about retraining yourself. You might have to go into say some kind of a career that you might not have ever even thought of before.
Okay.
Because there's new careers that are opening up every single day.
Okay, and I'm saying that we can also help manifest a reality for people that includes that if we understand that this change is coming, that we also have to be willing to manifest change for people who, if you are 63 years old and you've lived in the same place all your life and don't know any other place, if we as a society are not willing to help each other figure this stuff out, then we really do have, well, obviously we've got bigger problems, but I think if we're talking about change in general, that is one place that we can start. We can start by helping people who do understand what big changes are coming, explain this to the people who don't know that it's coming, and then start making real solid plans, not just pie in the sky. Hey, your job's going to be replaced by an AI in the next 5 years. Look, here's the programs that I think you should enroll in. Here's community counselors to figure out what the job market is going to look like. I mean, we've got the resources. We can do this. We are smart people as a general population. I don't feel like this is outside of our purview.
I think there are some programs already in place in those places, like in Appalachian, certain places where there's coal mining operations that have been shut down. So I think that is the case. But then there's huge other swaths of engineering, truck driving, all different types of transportation jobs that are going to be taken away. But I think it's going to have to go case by case basis because you have a lot of different factors in there. So it's going to be pretty tough regardless. And I do agree that the United States has the economy to be able to shoulder any kind of problems that come up. I mean, even if you displaced some of the military spending in that regard, and reallocated it towards helping these getting these programs off the ground, that would be a huge step in the right direction too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Okay, just catching up on comments here. Ellie from France says the type of technologies that have been mentioned here, some of them are only available to the upper class. Tony Davis says VCRs are old technology that need to be put to sleep, but for some reason, people are still selling VCRs and VHS tapes. LOL. Look at this. Ellie also says the only power is your wallet. And then LA saying, no, in quotes, they, unquote, are the drivers of technology. Whoever, quote, they, unquote, are, it's just not me or any of my students.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, too. That is a really good point. And that's exactly, I think, what I was trying to say before about there has to be a way we can all access this without feeling like it is just out of our control completely. I don't believe that it's out of our control. I feel like we've lost the ability to see that it is in our control, but I don't think it is.
Well, the world of procrastinators, right? I mean, that's.
I'll get back to you on that tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I do have to say, though, Dr. Vibe, Jay, Tony, LA, everyone else that was in here so far, I appreciate you guys, doing this show and taking the time to be a part of Kente's 24-hour stream. And I will be on later tonight, guys. I will be on for their closing show, but I do have to go for the day. I do have a few interviews I have to do myself.
No problem. Thanks for making the conversation better.
Thanks, Patrick.
But can you exit me out, Dr. Vibe? I can't do it myself.
I will do that.
Thanks.
I will do it. Well, actually, Kente has to do it. I don't have
Hey, Kente, kick me out. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah,
I'll kick you out.
He's home.
Well, and I just I hope I have time to bring this one last point in. And
you got
this thing of, it's kind of joking about VCRs and VHS tapes and stuff like this, but not just a thing of adaptation. It's also a thing of when adaptation has kind of forced upon you. And examples of that, lightheartedly, the VHS, the VHS tapes, but when change is forced upon you, like I'm using the example of hurricanes when they come through the area, and it destroys an entire town or population, forest fires, out in California. When places become abandoned ghost towns, when theme parks become abandoned places, like that because of hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, that kind of thing, are people really able to deal with the adaptation? In many cases, like what I'm talking about, no, they're not. It becomes towns become ghost towns. Theme parks become holes of once enjoyment to now rusting roller coasters all over the place. Technology becomes abandoned and becomes scrap metal or whatever. That's also another thing in adaptation you have to deal with is, can people even handle the change?
Well, this is what I'm saying here, that more and more I feel less and less people can handle the change because it's going so fast, and it's a small minority of people that are implementing this change who are able to adapt to it, let alone at that time, or if not in a decent amount of time, where more and more people are being left behind. That is what I'm trying to get across. It change is, I don't know if it's helping as much people, because when I hear the word change these days, I hear change, but I don't know if it's change for the good or change for the not good. And the more I'm hearing more changes that are not good or not fully thought through, as Jay Carino was saying earlier, that they're not, whoever are making these changes are not taking the macro thought process in regards to it.
Yeah, I think it's not always going to help. I mean, unless, like Jay said, if somehow the greatest minds put their heads together and go, listen, we want to help everybody, or we want to teach the next tier down of intelligence. And I'm not saying people are of less intelligence, but people are. in some cases. You teach the next level down from you that have your whatever you have. You teach the next people down. They teach the next people down, and so on, to try to create as close to 100%, I guess, as you can get. But I don't believe in the next, even 100 years, we're going to be anywhere near that kind of lofty goal. I would hope we're at least at 50 to 60 by that time. But that's me being very optimistic, unfortunately. I just think that eventually, because it may start at the top and they may try to teach and try to help, but I figure that there is always a kink in every armor. And I think eventually down the road of that, you'll hit the kink, and the kink will not stop progress, but at least slow it.
Yeah.
Patrick, I've also DM'd Kinte to see if he can kick you out of the way.
I don't have an interview for an hour and a half, but I wanted to get ready for the topics we were going to be discussing. But I'm glad to stay until I get kicked.
No problem. Tony, I interrupt. It sounded like you wanted to say something.
No, he didn't have anything worthwhile to say. No, I'm just kidding, Tony. Go ahead.
I said, he must be asleep or something.
Oh my gosh, Jay Carino, what is on your mind and your heart?
I think that this kind of conversation is exactly the place that we need to be in terms of understanding what does come next. If everything that we're talking about in terms of change, also, by the way, it's Jen, just so everybody knows. Yeah. I feel bad that you're calling me Jay. It's Jen.
Okay.
No, thank you, Jay.
Okay, Jay.
Change is hard. I get it.
Procrastinated learner.
Get off my lawn, please.
If we,
Sorry, go ahead.
If we can have more of these kinds of conversations between everybody, if each person has a conversation with the people that they know, that they care about, that they want to see adapt to everything, this is exactly the way to do it. It's got to come from not just a position of compassion. It's got to come from a position of discovery. Hey, I want to help everybody discover. I want to learn. Part of the reason that I feel like sometimes these podcasts are so incredibly powerful is because there is enlightenment in them, in the sense that you get to hear from people that you may never get to hear from their side, because you don't run into these people in your everyday life, or because your social group doesn't include that particular train of thought. And so the more that we can widen this discourse into understanding what changes are to come and how we can embrace it, but also how we can keep up with it, the better the world is going to be. So I have to applaud everybody for being just actively a part of this kind of conversation. I think it's really powerful.
Can I say something really quick, Dr. Vibe?
Please do. Got half an hour, so take your time.
Okay, this is aimed towards LA. I want to apologize for our first interactions in the show. I feel that maybe I was offending by what I was saying, and I do apologize. And I think I speak for some people in the U.S. and around the world that they think very analytically, and it's hard for me to process a lot of emotion into my thought process. Unless it's like maybe my parents or my daughter or my fiance, it's a very tight circle. But outside of that, I try to attack it from an analytical standpoint, and I apologize to her, because I understand there are stresses, there are things that haunt everyone not haunt everyone, but that burden everyone each day. And I do promote, like Jen is saying, I almost said Jay, like Jen is saying, like the rest of us are trying to say, try to find those 2 seconds a day that you may be able to catch up in a way that will benefit whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. If it's something that's going to benefit what you're trying to accomplish in your life, or even at this moment, like being in the moment, take those 2 seconds to kind of take a breather and find out what can help me today. What can help me accomplish what I want to accomplish? And I think that's all I was trying to get to. And I wish I would have slowed down a little bit and really took my time to answer that.
Good stuff.
That's it. I apologize. There we go.
No problem. And LA is saying back, thank you. I appreciate it. I will make that time.
I appreciate it, LA.
So I appreciate that we can have those type of conversations and that type of thought process. That's what I like to see. So I appreciate that very much. Okay. And Patricia's saying, I get so tickled when a problem that is caused by change is met by a shrug of shoulders and a statement that, quote, this is the end times, unquote, by certain people. That is so much that is so much easier than actually tackling the problem. Well said, Patricia. Well done. Well done. But that unfortunately, you hear that. You definitely hear that big time.
Yeah.
Also, too, and I'm sitting here in Toronto, and the three. Well, I'm going under the understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the three other participants that are live right here are in the United States. What is it seems looking from above you, physically, geographically, below here, are people getting more entrenched in their thought process? Which, taking a people getting more entrenched, and I'm not just talking politically wise, but culturally wise, socially wise, which is going to make change even more difficult.
Well,
what do you mean by looking above us? By the way, sorry.
Canada's above geography.
Oh, geography wise. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Just geography wise. No other way. I'm staying in my lane. I'm just talking facts. Geography wise, last time I looked at the globe, we were above you. Yes. That's it. Yes. Go on now.
I'm going to tackle that real quick. I'm going to say that although I think that we as a culture believe that we are more entrenched than ever before, I think that is a polarization of politics. And what I really see in terms of where we are in social progressivism is that you're not going to stop the march of social progressivism. And I say that that's not a political statement. That is a statement of how culture is marching forward. We are becoming far more inclusive. We will always have pockets of resistance to that kind of stuff, but we are moving in this direction that I don't think you can stem the tide of it. So when you say, are people becoming more entrenched? I think that there are vocal pockets of people who are more entrenched, and because they are the outliers, they are right now getting more attention than the average person, because the average person is still the status quo, and that's not exciting, and it doesn't sell it doesn't make ratings, it doesn't sell ads. It's less exciting to pay attention to normal than it is to pay attention to what is on the outside. And so we get a sort of a false narrative going through that somehow there are far more pockets of people being ugly and I mean, they're there, don't get me wrong. I've seen them myself. I've experienced it. I live in Hawaii, which culturally is probably one of the most inclusive places on the planet. And yet I'm a white person living in Hawaii. So I get a lot of, it isn't always a great experience. I'm on the other side of the spectrum here, but I still get white privilege. I still get, I'm still afforded the kind of cultural appreciation that I didn't do anything to earn. So there is a sense even out here that while people are that there's always going to be different ideas about how we do things, I feel like in terms of whether people are more entrenched or less entrenched, they're more entrenched in the political moment than they are in how is this affecting everyday life. The number of bathrooms now that have genders and then gender neutral are exploding. And that's just one small, tiny little segment of society that has changed within the past 5 years. And I don't see how that I don't see how that stops. I see people continuing to be loud and vocal about it, but I don't see how we stop being inclusive as a culture and a society, right? Does that make sense?
I get it, but I will tell you exactly where it ends. And I'll talk about it only in one aspect, and that's an aspect of sports.
Oh, yeah, okay.
there are the transgender athletes that there are the two that were biologically born male that are, and I forget what state they're in, but they are female track runners. And they are winning track meets against biological females.
Well, okay, but wait. Before we go into that, my comment was more about because I don't know if that's actually sort of where I was heading. Where I was trying to say was that society is moving toward more inclusiveness in terms of how we are changing. And although we are entrenched in our quote unquote camps when it comes to our ideologies and perhaps even what we consider to be our moral centers, I think as a group, we're far more progressive as a society than we even give ourselves credit for, because we pay attention to the outliers of that. And we really call into sharp focus things when they don't seem like they are the norm, if you will. So that's, I think, why we have such a hard time when things go off the rails the way that they do. That doesn't feel normal to us. And my point is that even 5 years ago, those things may have felt normal to us. Does that make sense?
Completely. And I do think some of that inclusion you're speaking of, I do have to say, I don't think it's of the older generations. I want to give everyone enough credit, but unfortunately I can't. I do believe it is of younger generations. As younger generations, as it keeps, going up and up and up, the younger generations seem to be the ones nowadays that want to make the change. They want to make a change towards it, where the older generations are okay with the way things are. And they're not necessarily like they're trying to, some of them are trying to hate on people and not include everyone. But some of them, or the majority of them, I feel, are actually just okay with living their own lives and not paying any attention to any kind of inclusion anymore. They're like, you know what? I paid my dues when I was younger. I don't really feel like I need to care about inclusion anymore. I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing all my life, and I'll be fine, myself. Me and my family, it's not going to affect us, so I'll be fine. And I think the younger generation is like, listen, we're going to build something so when the generation than us comes up, they're going to see that they're then, we would be called elders, took the steps necessary to try to include.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Sorry, I hope that's more on the point.
No, and that brings up a really good point that you're speaking about there, Patrick. Do we feel confidence or have a sense of confidence of the future with our young people adapting this change and using this change for the better? Because they're the next generation coming up, and a lot of the change they're able to get a sense of or get an understanding of better than they're doing not too bad a job. Do we have faith that they'll be able to manage it? There'll be some ups and downs along the way, but do you feel confident with these changes and how young people
sort of?
Okay, go ahead.
Sort of, and it's like Jay said earlier. I think you said it, Jay, Jen. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
As I look down at your screen, that's the first thing that comes into my eye. But anyways, Jen, as you said, I think earlier, it is us that are teaching the younger generations. We're teaching them how to be. If people are saying people are ignorant to certain things, a lot of the parents or a lot of the older generations than the generation we're saying are unintelligent, they're teaching those. They're getting them ready. They're training them. And I think that's why I said maybe a little bit, because I feel that if this generation or my generation and maybe even the generation that came after me take the time to teach future generations after us the right way to have inclusion and to not be so okay with I guess mediocrity of thought, and I hope that makes any sense. Just saying that the being okay where you are, being stuck in the middle, being okay with being in the middle, and just moving forward with your life instead of actually actively trying to make a change. With like myself, I'm 30. With my daughter is 9 years old. I am trying to instill in her the ability to understand inclusion is a great thing. Making a change, if you see a way to, in a positive light, is a great thing to stand for and go for and strive for, because many people along the way will tell you it is not the thing to strive for. This is not what you should be doing. You should turn around and just be okay with status quo for right now. Do it on another day. Procrastinate mentally for another day and economically for another day. But you know what? If she takes the right steps, and people of her generation and my brother's generation and even younger as we all get older, I think that is the precedent we want to be setting, because if we don't, then no, I don't trust the younger generations because we're teaching them to fail. We're setting them up to fail the whole of humanity from now until whenever it changes.
I'm going to add one thing to that, and I'm going to say that I have learned a heck of a lot from my kids, because my kids, I don't like using this word because I feel like it gets overused, but my kids have a quote unquote woke sense to them that I didn't understand until I was able to process through their experiences what was happening. And so they, as young adults, have taught me a heck of a lot about not just where we're going in terms of society, but what real culture is not just in their generation, but how they perceive and see the generations above them. And that kind of back and forth, the stream that goes back and forth, that's really important, because the people who it's a weird situation, right? I mean, for the people that are in the US, we know that when you get to be past 40 and above, you make up the biggest segment of the voting bloc in the United States. The people who are younger, they don't always tend to vote. So if you are listening to the people who are younger, if you are listening to, you can encourage them to vote, but if they don't, at least you have an understanding of where society is going. At least you can start to manifest those changes in your own world. You can make or move toward changes that are seriously happening. Like, we don't have to be the ones, my generations above me, the millennial generation, we don't have to be the people that stand in the way of progress. We can listen and learn from the culture at large and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this is a good idea. I feel like that's important.
I like that you said that. And there's a thing with, what's her name from New York, I think, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking about her, and I love her. I hope I won't get too far into aspirations for her future, but I will say that when she was on, and I know she's been on so many shows lately, but I believe she was on not Jimmy Kimmel. Whatever, Jimmy Fallon, I think it was. And she was talking to Jimmy Fallon and said, it's funny because you think that the world's not progressing, and you think that there's a way that, Congress and the way that change moves through the House of Representatives and the Senate and the White House and blah, 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 right? Well, her point was that she stopped before her election to Congress. Her point was that she saw, and she had a 19-year-old stop her in the street and say, "Oh, I just voted for you. I can't believe I'm meeting you. I just voted for you. I want to see change." A 19-year-old in an election off year, not a presidential election, an election off year. Yeah, outvoting and excited about it is awesome.
It is astounding.
Just want to jump in here. Donald said that the younger generation is more, we can trust them with change because they're detached from religion and politics.
Well, I mean, that's
politics.
There's a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
But I think we will see, in regards to change, we'll see how long it lasts. More and more young people are getting, at least voting, or at least getting out there to vote, because they don't like what's going on and they want change.
Good on them. I mean, if our entire country really did vote in the bigger numbers, then more of what the real population wanted would see it manifest. But as it is right now, I'm telling you, the biggest vote is 40 and above. And when you think about it, you're leaving the choices of this country in their hands. So when you don't like what happens, if you're not voting, if you're thinking that it doesn't matter, it does. It really does.
Well, here's the biggest issue, and here's the thing, and I will say one more thing. I just talked about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I will say during the last election, I'm not a person, and I don't know why people are so like uptight about sharing things. I just don't understand. I probably don't because of the younger generation, maybe. But I find a lot of older generations upset and uptight about talking about, like, I guess they would consider it political affiliation. But I don't consider it, Democrat, whatever, Republican. I don't care about any of that. I want to see somebody doing something right for the country as a whole. I don't care what side of an aisle you stand on, really, honestly. But yes, normally when you think people say Republican, normally that means stiff white guy that only cares about money and not about the little guy. So yes, I had voted for Bernie Sanders in the last election in the primary. Then it came down to Hillary. And as you see, the popular vote shows Hillary won that. But what I'm saying is there's other steps, not just the 40 and above. There's other steps in the government taking away from actual decisions being made by the general public. There are other roadblocks that I truly believe need to be eliminated in the future in order to stop these roadblocks from happening.
Yeah.
If 51%, listen, Dr. Vibe as well, and Tony and Jen, if 51% of people vote for something and 49% of people vote for something else, does that not mean that the majority of people voted for thing A?
Yes.
To me, that tells me, okay, so then the roadblock known as the Electoral College got in the way.
I'm gonna hop off.
That's what that tells me.
It's time for me to go eat. So
you go ahead, and when we get to 5 o'clock, when this show ends, I will be hopping off.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Take care, Tony. Thanks again for making the conversation better.
Thank you. So
take care. We've got a few more minutes left. If anyone wants to jump back in, we've got probably about 10 minutes maximum left to come in on the conversation. It's been a good one. And Jen, I'm living in Hawaii. You don't want to know what's going on in Toronto right now. The weather is out of bounds right now. Like I'll say it in Fahrenheit, with the wind chill is about minus 20 below.
I spent most of my youth in upstate New York, so I feel like, much like a prison sentence, I did my time, right? Now I live in the tropics, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this is what it feels like to jailbreak. Oh. This is it.
So as we're starting to wind down the epic conversation here, I want both you to make some final comments in regards to what changes. Let's put the crystal ball on. What are some of the changes you'd like to see when it comes to today's society? And I always like to do on the Dr. Vibe show, ladies first. So Jen, what are some things you'd like to see big picture wise change in the society to make it a better place?
I can think of two things right off the top that I think would make our society better. One is a better focus and understanding of what we are teaching children on very academic in primary and all the way up to high school levels. I think that is the core of what we are failing at. We don't teach civics the way that we're supposed to. We don't encourage the generations that are coming from we don't teach younger generations to behave in civic discourse and with civic minds the way that we once did. And I think that is a failing of ours. I don't think there's any other way around it. Our democracy cannot thrive unless we teach people how to use the tools that are around us, including technology, to change who we are and where we're going. So that's one. And then two, I think if we as a culture can embrace the idea that change is not a bad thing, that if we can somehow alleviate even a little bit of anxiety around it, we can make more positive changes and help people through it so that they're not experiencing these huge, tumultuous, life-altering times, and give them support. I don't understand why we think that support is somehow equated to weakness. And I think that's part of why people don't change, because they see change and then needing help with it as some kind of weakness, like I can't do it myself. So those are two big things I think we could do.
Just before, what I love about the way you presented that, Jen, is two things. You had one for the younger people and one for the older people. Well done, Patrick.
And I think I hopefully believe science will cover for younger and older. It's basically on top of what Jen said is learning to think for yourself and critical thinking and learning how to have a conversation. You know, that to me is what science does best, is learning, you know, it's not biased. It tells you straight fact. It lets you think critically. It lets you try to think for the future, you know, and there are things that may stay the same for people of older generations that like things that stay the same, but also for younger generations that want to move the progress bar ahead. It definitely helps you move ahead by helping you think critically and helping to make other discoveries. And I think that also is taught in subjects like are taught in school that are not taught with very good passion from teachers as well. Is that like you said, Jen? It's not taught very well. I think that if people were taught to have a passion for something and not just this is a I'm enslaved to school basically, and then after 12th grade, I can throw away my papers in the air and walk away and run away and be happy again. No, if you're taught to be intrigued by it and want to learn and want to find out more information and want to move things forward and have communication, that's what school should do. And I do believe that they should really make a jump to that in the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay, well, we are coming to the end of our epic conversation. I'd like to first and foremost thank Jen, Patrick, Tony, LA, who came on live. Thank you so much. Also, Donald. Donald came on live also. I'd like to thank Patricia and Ellie for coming in and making comments. Appreciated. Not the easiest of conversation topics, but thank you so much that you faced it and dealt with it head on. In regards to me, I think one change I'd like to see is let's chat with each other and listen to each other. Let's do more, like things like this are great, but also if you get the opportunity to see someone face to face or even make a phone call. One of the things I do with a lot of people, I'll either phone them or give good phone. That's one of the things I would say, give good phone. And then also either email them or leave them a message and just say 2 words, you're good, because it all starts individual. If we want change to happen, it has to start with each person individually. And the best way to do that is with love. On that note, it's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. If you want to touch base with me, the best way is I'll just say VIBESHOW.com. Kinte is in the house. I'd like to say large thanks to Kinte. Also, thank you, Sandra, thank you for stopping by. Also, Mocha Awa, thank you for staying for the whole thing. Thank you, Sharon, also for the whole thing. And it's over to Kinte.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming out. And we have another show. Actually, it'll be the Ebony Empress herself, Sandra. Yeah. She's going to do her thing. So we're going to do.
Well, Kinte, one other thing. It was hilarious because Patrick had asked you to kick him out about half an hour ago, but it was good that it worked out good because he stayed around and he helped make it an epic conversation. Again, Patrick, much props to you for the apology. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. That's large. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. So we'll close this one out and start the next room. All right, you guys.
Peace. Take care, Jen.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Anytime.